Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Round Peg Square Holes podcast. I'm here today with Marcus Smith, motivational speaker, entrepreneur, extreme athlete, and coach. We're going to be talking about the steps that you need to develop an ultra mindset. Marcus, amazing to have you here. Thank you so much for joining in, mate.
I'm super excited. This is the first 24-hour show interview I've ever been on, so I'm really excited to see if you fall asleep.
So Marcus asked me just before we went live. Marcus said to me, "How long is this gonna take?" And I said to him, "Well, didn't your team tell you it's a 24-hour ultra podcast? You know, we thought we got Marcus on, so we'll do a 24-hour one." And the way this is going to work, guys, is we're basically going to keep the podcast going until the last live viewer switches off. All right? And Marcus has already agreed to it, so it's all good.
I'm ready. And the good news is I'm actually stood up. So
you stood up.
A chair. And yeah, I'm stood up. So it's all.
You know, if this was really going to be in challenge, you should kind of be in like a stress position, like a squat position or something. Do you know what I mean?
I've got a little bit of water as well, so mate, it could go. This could go anywhere. Brilliant.
He's done the Marathon De Sables. He's going to be fine. You know.
Yeah, no problem.
So first of all, I've just got a really, really quick question. What's it like to run 30 marathons in 30 days?
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. It's literally you experience every single emotion and also physical feeling that you could imagine. You start to feel things in your parts of your body that you never even knew existed, mate. You also, it's incredibly emotional because people from around the world contacted me. People from around the city of Dubai, where I ran those marathons, contacted me. The Crown Prince came and ran with me. It's just mental, Sebastian. It's almost like it's surreal, mate. And even now, 2 years later, I'm almost like, did that really happen? And you always get these flashbacks to, I remember on that day on that street. And the best one, mate, I think you'll enjoy this, is sometimes I go to the grocery store and a kid pops his head around the aisle and he's like, it's the Marathon Man. And I'm like,
the Marathon Man. Amazing.
Yeah, so it was wild, mate. Absolutely wild.
Wow. I'd love to get into a lot of this, like a lot of these stories about, the challenges you've taken on. I think that's going to be super inspiring for a lot of those kind of watching or listening to the podcast. But first of all, let's take it straight back. Let's take it back to growing up. Marcus Smith, growing up, what was life like? Where did you come from? You told me you're from the north of England, but I don't think you are.
No one believes me.
He doesn't sound. I said to Marcus, "Where are you from?" He said, "The north of England." I said, "You don't sound like a Peaky Blinder."
Not at all, mate. That's that's where we're from. My family are from York. We moved over here to Dubai when I was 4 years old, which, it was an incredible time because Dubai was quite basic back then. But my memories are very straightforward, and I think what have shaped me today. And I believe that what happens in our youth, a lot of the way that we're brought up and the environments that we're brought up in really do sort of have a big impact on what we become. And for me, life was a lot about sport. My parents were incredibly sporty. My mum was a runner. My dad was a runner and a triathlete and a cyclist. And I just have so many beautiful memories of waking up on a Friday morning and dad's just come back from a 100K bike ride. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And, on a Thursday evening, mom and dad and all their friends would come to our house and they'd run 10K from our house, and they'd let me out. They'd almost let me out the gate to meet them for the last 500 meters. So mom and dad are coming in absolutely smoked, and I'm running as fast as I can, trying to win. So that's mate, that's sort of my early memories, and I think it really plays into what I do now and what I get a lot of satisfaction from, which is sport and just sort of living. It was quite a simple life back then. It's very different Dubai then to what Dubai is now. We're talking about the 1980s, to what it is now. It's very different. And I like that simple side. I love Dubai now. I still live here. It's home. I'm here with my wife and it's absolutely fantastic. But I had a great upbringing here. And then I was, because there wasn't really any great schools here then, I was actually sent to boarding school, mate, which probably probably answers a lot of the questions that people have about me in a number of different ways. And I went to boarding school in the north of England, just outside York, where it was freezing cold, absolutely savage environment. And that's sort of where I continued this relationship with running and with sport. And I absolutely hated the classroom. It just wasn't for me, mate. I was just disruptive and probably quite a horrible child. So again, that's probably where a lot of my background comes from. And sort of to wrap up that part of my life, mate, I then did my degree in Leeds. And then after being in the UK for about 14 years, getting educated, I realized that I wanted to be back in Dubai. And I moved back here in 2001. And it's kind of been home really ever since. And I love it. It's brilliant.
Amazing. Brilliant. Yeah, I can completely, relate to what you're saying about how having that pursuit of a physical activity or a sport when you're younger can be so influential. It certainly was the case for my family. I think all my family, heavily into sport and stuff. And it's so nice for young people to kind of have that, to kind of, spend all their time doing and have that pursuit. Do you know what I mean? It really does shape someone's character.
It does, mate. And that's kind of what makes me wonder what's happening today. And this is probably quite deep 5 minutes in, but I look at kids and I look at the way that we were as kids, getting outside, just running in the street, kicking a football around and just being a menace, trying not to get run over. But now for entertainment, kids move to devices and they stay a lot more inside. And it's really interesting to me because how we're evolving as human beings. And you and I are probably sort of one of the last generations that went outside for hours and kicked a football against a wall. It just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I live in a neighborhood and a community and I hardly see kids. And I'm like, why is that? So yeah, it's really quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely got memories of, coming home when the street lights go on and, just coming home covered in mud, my parents wondering where I've been for the last 6 hours, and,
Dad hoses you down in the garden and stuff like that.
But yeah, life was outdoors, and I think you're right. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because how do you think that impacts children going forward? If we're talking 10, 20 years later?
I think that's a really good question. And this is strictly my opinion. I think there's a lot of massive positives, but I think there's an incredible amount of negatives as well. And I think that's split 50-50, mate. So kids have skills now that the future is going to be more tech savvy. I mean, look at us now, mate. We're actually in the same city, but we're on this call, and tomorrow, next week, next year, people are going to be able to download it from iTunes. It's incredible, the access that we have. So there's a lot of positives in that technology. But I also believe that children today are missing a lot of almost life skills and a lot of stimulation, mental stimulation and stimulation of the senses that we got from being outside and that we still get from being outside. So I think it's going to be super interesting. I don't know how fast it's going to go, but I'm 42 now. I'm pretty sure by the time I'm 50, I'll have a different opinion, whether it'll be more one way or more the other. But I just think it's an incredible time. And I think it's also incredible. I don't have children, but I think it's incredibly challenging for those people that are bringing up children in the world right now. Like, what's the right thing to do? And I often sort of argue with my sister who has 2 boys. And I'm like, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And then I'm like, I should just shut up now. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be super interesting. But I also think, mate, what we have to be at peace with is it is what it is, and that's part of the way that we're evolving as humans, which again sounds quite a deep statement, but it kind of is the way that we're evolving. We're not in the Stone Ages anymore, we've moved on, and not everyone's gonna love where we're going. And maybe I'll be an old man, or maybe I'm already an old man. And when I was a lad, it'll be a phrase I use a lot more. And, but I just encourage people. And that's why at my gym, we teach kids and we just encourage kids to come and do physical activity, because what really scares me or worries me is the rates of childhood obesity, but obesity on a whole, but also as a result of parents making selfish decisions and giving their kids poor food. it's really it's really sort of holding those kids back in life. And that's quite sad.
Yeah, 100%. It's an interesting thing as well, because you mentioned that this is the way we're evolving. I completely agree with that. You know, I just had I had an interview earlier today. I was interviewing Barry Lee Cummings, who runs Beat the Cyberbully for the Warrior Academy podcast, and you know, he's got immense knowledge in the dangers of cyberbullying, but he, like me, agrees that, you know, you've got to kind of, you can't avoid the future. You can't avoid the fact that the human race is evolving and technology is a huge part of who we are and what we do. But you've got to put things in place to control it, right? Things in place to make sure that you're kind of maximizing the positives and decreasing the negatives.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. Yeah, that's the thing.
Definitely. So tell me a bit more. You're back in Dubai now. You're in Dubai now. You're running your business. You set up your gym in a fight. Let's hear a bit about that.
Yeah. So, and this is where sort of when it comes to entrepreneurship and how I got into it, I was working for the corporation. I worked for Adidas for 5 years. That was the longest stint I did with one company. Absolutely loved it. But I realized at that time that I guess my calling, mate, was not to be in a corporation forever. I loved it when I was there, but I knew it wasn't forever. And I realized that by looking at some of the older blokes that were there, and I was like, I just don't want to be one of them. And I was in a talk one day, and this guy was just making such a big impact on people. He had about 2,000 people in the room, and he was able to make a big impact on them. I was like, I think I can make an impact on people. I think I can help people. And I've been coaching people a little bit, and it got to a point where I had a lot of people that were just working out with me in a public gym here in Dubai. And in 2008, I said, okay, all the workouts that we do and what we do, I'm just going to talk about it on a website. And that's actually when I started the brand In a Fight. And 2 years later, I realized that it was now my time to pursue what really made me happy full time. So I'd actually moved to Nike then, and I quit my job at Nike, it was an incredible job. It was financially incredibly lucrative, if you want to call it that. That didn't really turn me on much, to be honest, mate. It was great, but that, you know, I just annoyed me, the money, and I was like, I can really help people. And, you know, it's quite interesting sort of, because you take a step back from the hustle and bustle of the corporate world, and I was on my own, and I was like trying to build this business, just coaching people. And I just realized that people need help, and I could help people. The way that I approached things, the way that I delivered what I was delivering, whether it was sort of mentoring, whether it was mindset coaching, all of the stuff from really my own experience was making an impact. And I just realized, and that's the vision of my company, to make people better at life, because some people are going to stay in the corporate world, and I think that's awesome. And I think they should live a great life. They should look forward to going to the corporate world. So if I can help them be physically and mentally in a better place when they go there every day, then they're going to have a great life. And you know, the brand's evolved a lot. We teach people fitness. We taught people CrossFit. We have a big endurance section. We teach kids. We teach yoga. We do a whole load of stuff that, and everyone says, how did you decide to start doing endurance coaching? And I was like, well, there was an opportunity, and it ticked the box because it makes people better at life. So we go and do it. Did in 2008 when I set up the business, did I think, okay, in 2020, you know, this weekend I'm taking 30 people to a race in Ras Al Khaimah, and we've got a camp running on Jebel Jais, and there's people in all parts of the world following our programs. Did I think that was going to happen? No. And that's why sometimes in entrepreneurship, you've got to sort of just roll with stuff. And it's like, does it feel like a good idea in your gut? If so, crack on. You know, what's the worst that can happen? And that's probably one of my favorite phrases. I'm like, well, what's the worst that can happen here? You know what I mean? It's often not that bad.
This is what Marcus said, February 2020. And then, and then,
isn't it?
Yeah, right. I think a lot of people said that at the beginning of this year. But no, I love that phrase. I think that's a typical phrase that entrepreneurs kind of need to remind themselves, right? Because, you know, fear really is this kind of imagination of things that could go wrong, this exaggeration of the imagination of what could go wrong. And I think often it, you know, by kind of really focusing on that, you're not having a true representation of what's realistic, what's a realistic outcome, right?
Yeah, and as well, mate, I think sometimes when we focus on every single variable of what can be right and can be wrong, we become very conscious of what can go wrong, and sometimes somehow our subconscious can start working towards making the wrongs a reality, which is,
Yeah.
it sounds a little bit weird,
Yeah.
and you probably have to listen to that twice, but it can actually happen. So,
Yeah.
you know, I just look at stuff and, you know, I mean, we use that quite flippant phrase, what's the worst that can happen? But it's literally just saying, it'll be all right. It's literally that's what it's saying, mate. It's like, it's good. I've got a good feeling about it. And, you know, I think a lot of the time we're ruled a little bit by business plans, by numbers, by what people have done before. But to be honest, and you speak to a lot of people who've set up their own business or even that work in a corporation still, they'll say, you know, it just felt good, so we did it. It just felt like a good idea. So I think people need to get in touch and remain in touch with their feelings in every area of life.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really good insight there. I think with business, when business is most successful, it's kind of like when the heart meets the mind and it comes together, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you're a very successful business owner, you're not just focusing on the logical side of stuff, because really, you know, business is relationships, it's human beings, it's emotion, it's you know, your thoughts and feelings and everything coming together to pursue something you're passionate about. You know,
Absolutely.
so it's having an awareness of that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think a lot of the time people, you know, businesses, relationships, and businesses is you know, how we make other people feel, and we focus too much on the business plan and not on making people feel good who are our customers. And I'm like, well, this is a bit counterintuitive as well. So yeah. Very good point, mate. Yeah.
Do you know what's interesting as well? I mean, a lot of you'll probably agree with me. Coming from a kind of martial arts and extreme sports background, I draw a lot of parallels between martial arts and extreme sports and business, right? And we touched on it very, very briefly with that kind of mindset you've got of what's the worst that can happen. And it's interesting then, do you see a lot of parallels between kind of the mindset it takes to be an ultra marathon athlete, extreme athlete, and business, when you're making those kind of decisions, the way you approach risk, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I kind of use the same philosophy, mate, which I simply called the ultra mindset. It's not only for like life. I think someone's written a book that's titled this, Life is an Ultra Marathon. It basically is. Like, I go to an ultra marathon, I go to an extreme place, and I have to solve many sort of puzzles along the way. Sometimes it can be my nutrition, sometimes it can be I'm just absolutely knackered. It's exactly the same in the business world. And the philosophy, if you like, that I use is things are going to go wrong. The biggest problem that people are facing these days is that we remain in a state of denial when things are going wrong. So the first thing I say to people is when there's a problem, you have to admit there's a problem. Now, in the business world, we can sometimes put problems off for weeks and months. When I'm running an ultra marathon, if I try and deny that there's a problem, I can end up failing that race, putting my life at risk, and having really quite a big problem. So the number one thing that I follow is that we should admit that there's a problem if there's a problem. Don't stay in a state of denial. In that moment, we just need to make sure that we reject the fact that problem. So the second point is reject the fact that the problem is going to stop you from achieving your goal. In business, in ultra, we want to get from A to B. Everyone wants to go as the bird flies. It's the quickest route. I do, you do, everyone does. I didn't want this year to be like it was. We've literally gone, this year we've gone this way, backwards about 10 years, forwards, you know, it's all over the place. So, and you have to be comfortable with that. And you say, reject the fact that it's going to stop you. You're going to get to your goal. With that in mind, the third point I use is to remain relaxed, because everyone is way too stressed out and too highly strung. So, and this is really tough, mate. Remember when you're a kid and your parents would say to you, listen, We'll just go to bed, sleep on it. We'll come back to it tomorrow. No, I'm not coming back to this tomorrow. You know, we literally just freak out. Man. We're doing the same in life. In business, we get frustrated and we're not relaxed. In ultras, again, if you get frustrated, you start to lose it, then your race could be over and your life could be in danger. And this is why relaxing is the hardest, it's the easiest thing to say. It winds us up the whole time, and it's the hardest thing to do. And the final point that I use for ultras, for business, no matter what it is when we've got a situation, I'll ask myself, what can I do right now to make this situation a little bit better? And a lot of people, they want to solve the problem. So they want to feel like they're moving forward. But like we said before, is sometimes you have to go laterally. In an ultra race, for example, the answer to what can I do right now is often when you're in trouble, especially if it's hot, I race across deserts, go and sit under a tree. You're sitting under this tree and your competitors can be screeching by and you have to be totally cool with that. Yeah. Because you are in trouble, but that's what can I do right now? You can't keep moving forward to the goal. It's the same in business. This year's been crazy. A lot of businesses have had to say, yep, what we can do right now is limit our losses for 2020 because we're confident that the markets will pick up in 2025. No, 2021, hopefully, guys. You know, so those 4 points, mate, are what I see as super important. I learned them from Ultra, but I also put them into business life. And every day, the more I think about them, the more they're applicable to every single way. So I just go through them once more if folks want them. Admit there's a problem, reject that it's going to stop you from getting to your goal, stay relaxed, and ask you, what can I do right now to make this situation better? And, you know, it works for me, mate, and it works for a lot of people, but they're the parallels from sport and business, and it's very close. Why? Because of what we were saying before, it's human behaviors. We're humans in sport and we're humans in business, and we have to keep that human side of both. It's super important.
100%. I think that's such great advice, especially for entrepreneurs. You know, just like those words: admit, reject, relax, and what can you do now to make it better? It really just speaks to entrepreneurs. I think, like, you know, there are so many business owners out there, I feel, who went into COVID, great topic for this, right? Went into COVID and they couldn't admit there was a problem. Yes. You know, they didn't accept that, you know, their business was going to have to shut down for months at a time. I know a lot of people thought this is just a bump in the road, things will be back in a couple of weeks. My approach to it the whole time was, what if we're shut down for 2 years? What can we do? And I think it's like long term, right? It's like you have a problem at the beginning of a 250 kilometer desert race. You're not thinking just about that moment. You're thinking long term. What's the bigger picture?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely, mate.
I think that's really carried.
This is and this is my theory on this, mate, and maybe it's interesting to share with you and the listeners and viewers, is that the world is teaching us that instant gratification is the norm.
Yeah.
I'm here right now in my villa in Dubai, got my smartphone. Within an hour, I can fuel my car. I can wash my car. I can have any grocery I want delivered. I can have any meal I want delivered. I can order anything. The list goes on. You guys know exactly what I'm saying. And we have become conditioned to accept immediate gratification because that's what technology gives us. Yeah. And we're more and more impatient, literally by the week or month, however you want to look at it. And this is another thing which goes back to what we were kind of saying before with kids. It's all kind of linked in with the technology side. This is kind of how we, you know, previously, if someone said to you, we work in the fitness industry. If someone says to you, 12-week program, you'd be like, that's long, but cool. But now, what are the programs that are selling? 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 days. Yeah. It's all just become a lot closer and a lot more immediate gratification, which
interesting. And you really started to notice that, I guess, in the fitness space, you're starting to see that as wow. Yeah. Really interesting. You know, there's something that I really like about feeling uncomfortable deliberately. like putting myself in a position where it's almost like this caveman primitive. You've got to kind of fight for survival. You're in an air conditioned gym, right? In a lot of these cases, but there's something about it where you're under a lot of stress physically. You're having to go through something which changes your mindset and has a huge amount of positive carryover into life, into your relationships, into your business life, and it's taking you out of that modern instant gratification into a totally different mindset and space, right?
Absolutely, mate. And that's, we try and do that through the, let's say, the brand of fitness that we deliver. We try and do that within our classes often, that we're looking at workouts. Yes, we look at it from a physiological standpoint and to make sure it's scientifically correct, but we're like, how can we create this extreme discomfort for someone, and that within this hour that we get them in the day, we can almost break them down so much that we have to then help to build them up, that then transfers into their family life, professional life. And an example of this is something like, a simple example is a burpee. If I ask someone to do 1 burpee, they're okay with it. 10, they're a bit annoyed at me. 20, they think I'm a bit stupid. But if I put on the board, and I did this 2 years ago on New Year's Day, the workout of the day was 1,000 burpees. And it's kind of like, well, what's going on? And people have to figure out a way to get out of it and to basically solve the problem that they're in. And that builds a skill set that transfers over into basically many parts of life. I think you've frozen. Obviously, it was boring what I was saying. Yeah, he's gone. I'm not sure if you guys can still hear me. I could do something quite amusing on this part of the show. No, I won't ruin it. He did warn me that this might happen, because sometimes it does happen. Here we go. He's back. Mate, I just had my clothes off. Did you see that? Did you catch me?
That's why I left.
Yeah, I know. I actually didn't realize for about 10 seconds that you were gone, mate. I just thought you were really interested in what I was saying.
Years, I can't tell this side. I have to wait for your reaction. So I can't. This is a StreamYard issue, guys. So I basically got to wait for whoever I'm interviewing to say, I think you've frozen, before I know.
Mate, I think that took about 10 or 15 seconds. So
don't worry, the guys are pros at editing this out, so it'll be no problem.
So that's how we sort of see it, and that can happen in the gym, or it can happen by taking someone out into the mountains, wherever, running 3 or 5K. But we can create these situations within fitness that then teach people skills and develop their mindset that then passes over into various areas of life, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And do you know what? I think there's something to be said about taking people outside and taking people into nature to do these challenges, right? I mean, when I look back to some of the extreme stuff I've done, it's always been the outside stuff where you're really close to nature, you're in the mountains or wherever it is, right? And I think what is it about that, do you feel, which has that massive impact?
It's natural. It's where we're from. I believe that we have a lot of animal instincts. There's a lot of the visually, and this goes back to some of the senses I was talking about through kids that are not stimulated in the same way that they used to be. Smells are a lot different. We just get aroused. Our senses get aroused in a number of different ways that we don't get when we're inside, and that helps us to release dopamine, which is a happy hormone, which makes us feel way better. So, have you frozen again? Yeah, he's gone. It's good that the host gets kicked out. It's normally the guest that should get kicked out, but when you can kick the host out and take over the show, that makes things even more. Here we go. He's back. Struggling. I need to send him some, no, he's gone again. I need to send him some 3G credit. Is it 3G or are we on 5G? Or is that the reason why we got COVID in the first place? Oops. Whoosh, another can of worms is open. Oh, maybe definitely not. Not going to work too good for our 24-hour. No. Oh, I've just seen all these Facebook comments. Thank you so much.
Can you see me?
We're happy to hear you. Yeah, you're back. Welcome to your show.
Normally it's a one-off thing, not twice, but you're very lucky today.
I'm super lucky, mate. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. Okay, so talk me through in a fight in terms of the challenges that you tend to set new clients. There'll be people watching this, living in Dubai, being a kind of Dubai-based community, who get what we're talking about, but want to kind of get that mindset shift and get the benefits of that, but maybe find it a bit daunting, right? I mean, the idea of going from never really running on a treadmill to running a Razo curve, it sounds like a bit of a step too far. So what's the middle ground? What's the first thing you would do?
The first thing, it's really simple, Sebastian. That's a good question, because I think sometimes half of the people that are listening or half the population will go, screw this guy too much. And half of them are like, oh, I want to know a bit more about that. Let me be very clear here, mate. Our number one priority when it comes to health and fitness is that people are safe and have fun. I believe that you keep people safe and you keep them having fun, they're going to have the best time ever. That's why one of our brand values is having fun. So that's what we try and do from the start. We'll use every sort of movement, piece of equipment that we've got. We're not a big sort of equipment, bulky gym. We've used dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells, pull-up bars, sleds, sandbags, all that kind of stuff to move our body in really more of the natural way that it's designed to move. And then we'll chuck in things like 100 burpees. It's not always 1,000 burpees. Things that we'll ask people to do, that someone will come in on the first day and we'll see if they can, for example, run 500 meters. If they can't, that's fine. They can walk that 500 meters. But then we'll chuck things into the program that we know really challenge people. And we're there, and that's the most important thing. We're not there to be nasty to people. We're there to help people. Sometimes people are like, you're a nutcase, you're crazy, you're this. I'm like, I'm doing this because I want to make you better. Because I know that if you can overcome this struggle in these, you said it before, mate, in these safe four walls, then you can go out into life and you can overcome that. And it happens, mate. We see people change their job or getting promoted. Their relationship changes. So many of these things change. So, it's a lot of people might be listening and might be going, I'm still not with this guy. Like, how does it really work? And that's where it's kind of like, it's difficult. We come and see us. We've created an environment that is different. It's not a normal gym. It doesn't have a load of mirrors in it. It sometimes has really loud music. Sometimes we speak quietly. Sometimes we're loud and aggressive. But we do it based on how we think that humans, and we've been doing it for 12 years, so we've kind of got it pretty well dialed in, how we think that humans are going to respond better and to get them better at life whilst being fun, whilst being safe and having fun. So that's kind of how we approach things, mate. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love it. I think it's a really unique approach. You know, you're not just looking at it from a fitness perspective. You're looking at it even more so from a mindset perspective, from how those kind of changes are going to influence your clients' lives and make that kind of impact, right? Which I really like. I'd like to kind of take a bit of go a bit off piste here. I know we talked a bit about business and COVID and stuff like that before you came on, and being a business owner in Dubai. I think this could be a really interesting conversation to have. Tell me a little bit about how kind of the lockdown impacted you, your mindset when it occurred, and what kind of steps you took.
Yeah, great question, mate. So on March the 14th, we got a circular from the Sports Council that basically said you have to close gyms. There's no warning. We sort of felt it coming, right? I think we all felt different things coming. My first question was, or the first thing I thought is, this is a really dangerous time for human beings. We're going to go and we're going to be forced into our homes and we're not going to be let out. Now, I've worked from home on and off since I set up the business. Some days I just come and work from home and it's all good, but I can still go out. But I knew that this was going to absolutely crush people. We'd seen it in the weeks before because we'd seen homeschooling. So I said to myself and I said to my coaches, and we sat down and we're like, how can we best serve our population, our community at this time? And we identified that physical activity was important, but we identified more than that, that emotional support was the most important thing. So we put together programs that was, yes, there's an hour workout in the morning, but honestly, Sebastian, you know it, mate. Sometimes if it's an air squat, if it's a burpee, it's all the same stuff. It's just working out. It's just getting tired. It's burning some calories. But what we did is we put in a lot of checkpoints along the way so that people that were working with coaches, they would have a call from the coach every morning after the workout, just to check in, just to say, how was the workout? And that was the opening. You know, it then becomes, the workout was good, the kids are screaming, everything's a nightmare, and we're just going, yeah, cool. So that emotional support was really important. We then established a number of touch points to further support our community. And it's nothing, I don't think we did anything sort of revolutionary, different to what others did. Maybe we held educational Zoom seminars, we held Zoom chats, we held online workouts for people, and we sort of just put challenges in place that people could do in their home. They could connect with other people from our community and talk about them. So we just tried to do things that brought the community together and helped people feel that they were together in this. And we tried to, through our podcast and through everything that we were putting out, we just tried to coach people of how to take care of themselves as far as sleep hygiene goes, as far as having a schedule within your day. Because, you know, I don't have to go to work. I don't need to be there at 9 o'clock. Well, what does it matter? I can get up at 1 minute to 9 and just be at my laptop. And we saw a lot of people sort of drowning into this and just losing everything. So we're just really hot on people and saying, routine is number one. You need to keep your routine. And that applies to your daily routine, your sleep routine, your food routine, and everything. So we know we're good in fitness. We gave them fitness, but we really we went all in on support on everything else. And, you know, we didn't, and one thing that I think is important to mention here, mate, is we didn't slash our prices and we didn't increase our prices. What we did is we increased the value, what we could call it, the value for money. We just realized that people needed more touch points during that time, especially during the brutal part of lockdown when we were in our houses and we couldn't go out. And we increased those touch points and just gave more and more value. And, you know, some people have stayed with us, some people have since left, and that's fine as well. I think what we did for humans during that time was the very best that we could do, mate. And I'm super proud of my team, of every single coach. We've got 12, 13 coaches that work for us. They really went all in and they supported others. And if they hadn't have been there, those other people could have really spiraled into some quite complex situations that I'm actually now helping other people who didn't use our services get out of. So it was a super interesting time.
Yeah, right. I mean, from what I'm hearing there, it sounds like you just kind of showed up for your community at a time when people needed support. It was way more of an emotional need than a logical need, right? It was just 100%. Like showing up for your community and being there and being that kind of voice. And I think a lot of people will look back. I know we had our whole team we phoned up about 2,000 or 3,000 members during like a 3-month period. And it was just to have like 20-minute conversations, non-rush, just how are you conversations. And it's exactly the same kind of mindset. It was just to be there and to show our face and to show we're not going anywhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's something, mate, I don't know how much you've thought of it since then, but I think we can really learn a lot from that. We've touched on it in the show so far about the emotional side of business, asking people how they feel. We did it then. We've done it. We did it in a tough time. Why can't we continue to do it? Why can't we continue to ask our clients what they think and actually listen to the answer? You don't have to action everything. If you did, you'd be changing your business model every single day. But why not just listen to people, support them, listen to people if they want to speak, and always try and connect your brand emotionally with people. I mean, that's what brands are trying to do. COVID made us do it to stay alive, But now we can start to feel that some businesses and some brands have got busy again, and they've forgotten about the fact that I'm a human being, I have a heart, I have emotion, and sometimes my purchase with you is emotional. So treat me nicely and you'll keep me, annoy me, and I'll leave. And it's quite straightforward.
I think a lot of business owners suddenly really leaned into this concept of community, right? And how important that is. Bringing people together in this kind of tribal feeling of unity within a certain sport or within a certain area or community, and it just makes a big difference, I think, to the way a business is managed, the way it's run, the way they gather their insights. A lot of people previously, I feel, were just kind of guessing what their customers wanted. Correct. But the people who kind of leaned in and asked instead of guessed and gained that feedback, had these conversations, they kind of evolved through lockdown into this hybrid offline online organization, which can help people on a deeper level, right?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And if you think about what you've just said, that also is a little bit, for some people, these small communities and these small supports and this sense of belonging is also something that was very natural 20 or 30 years ago. You'd belong to small societies, to small clubs. But when the world really started speeding up, and things have gone very fast over the last 15 or 20 years, we've lost that. So what we're doing, and this is the second or third time this has come up during our conversation, is we're just taking it back to how things used to be. And we're just going back to the roots of humanity, and we're actually finding great joy in that and success in it. So why don't we do it more? I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it? I remember this moment during lockdown where there was this huge sort of sense of everything stopped. Everything that we felt was good for the world, but also everything that was clearly bad for the world has stopped, right? And you've got dolphins swimming in like inner city like canals, and you've got stingrays in the Dubai marina now, and you've got pollution over China just like disappearing, and almost that moment of pausing, just kind of the whole world sort of paused. I don't know if people even remember it because everything's speeding back up again, right? Yeah. But I remember it. I remember how people were speaking and acting and feeling in that moment where the world kind of paused, and it was quite unique.
Yeah, it was, mate. And I think, maybe to sort of wrap up the COVID chat is we also made a lot of promises or statements as individuals during that time. When COVID or when lockdown's finished, I'm still going to do this. And my challenge to everyone, including myself, mate, is, are you still doing those things? I think that's really key, mate, because we identified things when we were at our lowest, when we were forced into this situation that would make us better human beings, would make us happier. And I just hope that people are still doing them, mate. I really do.
Yeah. That's really interesting, isn't it? Do you know what? When you give a human being loads of time, they'll spend that time on their greatest values, right? So what I often found is like a lot of people who were, they suddenly had all this time, but before maybe they were working loads. But one of their greatest values was health and fitness, and they were just like training 2 or 3 hours a day, right? Other people, their greatest values was their family. They were just spending, so much time with their family, and that's what they were pursuing. But in some cases, their values on health and fitness may have been higher than family. And so what you're actually seeing was they were spending time they could have been spending during lockdown, with their family, with their health and fitness. But what you're saying is basically, that moment of pause gave you an insight into what's most important to you. Are you still living by those values now?
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing for people to think about. I think about it every day, mate. I genuinely do. And mate, I'm no different to anyone else. I'm an entrepreneur. I started doing things in lockdown that are lockdown things, and I'm okay. I've parked those now. They're done. Some of the things I've continued.
What are we talking, like weird hobbies or what? Did you?
No, mate.
Did you get up to?
Well, my wife was away for 4 months, so I was on my own. No, okay. I mean, there's 2 things that really stand out, or there's 2 or 3 things that really stand out. I did a 10-minute daily show on my Instagram every morning at 8 a.m. Mate, honestly, to help me, I forced myself in front of a camera for 10 minutes just to talk. just to talk about things. And in doing so, it was an Instagram Live. It helped other people. Obviously, mate, that product ran its course. People are now, then people were in their own homes and they had the time and they listened to me. It ran its course. I then moved from that to a weekly update show on my YouTube channel where I didn't feel like daily I felt daily was too much. Then it was weekly, and I knew that would run its course as well. So there's certain things that I knew that when I was starting them, they would run their course. But I know that there's a lot of things that people have really positively impacted people. And by things like this, I mean things like eating a little bit better, like you said, training a little bit better, spending more time with the family, spending time in stillness, in quietness every single day. I spend a few minutes every single day, in pretty much stillness, just thinking. And I increased that in lockdown, and I said I would keep it high, and I do it more now. So that's something that I've personally held on to a lot. And I just think that there's a lot of positive behaviors that came out of COVID by people slowing down that have now been shelved. And I think they're super, and everyone say, I'm not doing it because I'm too busy. No, you're not doing it because you don't see it as important, but it is really, really important. It helped you in that tough time, and it can continue to help you now.
Definitely. Yeah. I think we were all in a position to kind of learn a lot about ourselves over lockdown, right?
Yeah.
So let's not waste that opportunity because it probably won't come again.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's
if
hope
you can look at it. that was meant to sound optimistic.
Yeah, wasn't it? Oh, good.
Yeah, well, there's a good and bad in everything, I suppose. And even if you look at the difficult situation of lockdown for people, there is something you can grasp from that difficult time. Right, you can squeeze some benefit out of it for yourself. I know that we've got some questions here, guys. Let me have a look on the right. I don't know if you can see on your screen actually on the right side.
Yeah, I can, mate. I've managed to figure this out whilst you left me there. I was like, having a look around.
Yeah, I do that now and again. I leave a couple of times during the interview just so you can have a quick read.
Yeah.
So we've got a good question here, and I can't see who it's from, guys, because it says Facebook user. I think there's a link at the top of the live where you can click and let StreamYard access you so we can see your name or whatever. But anyway, thank you for the question. Hi, Marcus. Was there any particular moment that inspired you to make the 30 marathons your goal?
There was 2 or 3. I'll try and get them in as fast as I can. The number one, in 2018, I was training to set an ultra cycling world record. On February, I was hit by a truck and I nearly lost my life. And therefore, ultra cycling was a little bit off the cards. And I thought to myself when I was in hospital, if I can't ride a bike, I can still run. And running has been a big part of my life. And I sort of started running more. And I was like, well, I was going to do something big this year. Instead of world record in ultra cycling, let's do something big in running. And I read a book by a gentleman called Dean Karnazes, who had run 50 marathons in 50 states in America in 50 days and had a massive impact on the community. And I was like, there's this thing called Dubai Fitness Challenge coming up. It's 30 days. I can tie it in and I can inspire people and run into schools. And I ran into about 15 schools, had hundreds of people run with me. And yeah, so that's kind of how it, and I thought to myself, mate, and this is one of my big drivers. I was like, I wonder if I can do that.
Yeah.
And then, and you know, I was like, well, yeah, of course I can. And then it goes back to the conversation we had before. What's the worst thing that can happen? What are the things that will make it possible? What are the things that won't make it possible? And all of these kind of things.
So leading up to this, had you ever run like 2 marathons back to back, or just like you only ever done one marathon? Yeah. You have done something before, right? It wasn't just a complete.
No, mate.
You had done 29 marathons before.
30 was too hard. No, mate. I started ultra running in 2013, and 2014 I entered my first race, which was a 300-kilometer single stage self-supported race. 2015 I ran across the Sahara. So I know how to run and I was into ultra endurance events. So it wasn't, and that's the thing, if anyone's listening going, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. You kind of earn the right to do these things, I believe. And you can't, well, you could just go out and run it, but it wouldn't be a great experience. So that's kind of, they were the kind of moments that brought the whole thing together. It was kind of a couple of different things, but 2018 was supposed to be quite a little bit different to what it was, but it was incredible. It really was.
Yeah, right. It's amazing how you managed to turn that, what was absolutely devastating into something which inspired so many people, right? And what a great story. But tell me about, if you don't mind, if you're happy to talk about it, tell me a bit about the accident and what happened and how you kind of brought yourself through that.
I don't mind at all, mate. I was out training on my bike. I was halfway between Sharjah and Kalba in the mountains, and I was in the wrong place. It was 50% of this accident was my fault, and a truck cut across me as I was basically undertaking it. Stupid maneuver. The truck shouldn't have been going where he was going. I shouldn't have been where I was, and I was pushed onto a brick wall that I hit at 54 kilometers an hour, and that kind of causes a few issues. I laid on the floor, and it was quite interesting because I was conscious the whole time, and I tried to wriggle my fingers, and I kind of could, and I was like, that's quite good. And I tried to wriggle my toes, and I could, and I was like, this is weird because I'm in an incredible amount of pain, but my spine seems okay. And then I was like, I felt this liquid in my mouth, and then I realized that blood was coming out of my mouth, and I was like, oh, this is not quite as good as I thought it was, sort of thing. And what had happened on the impact, I'd later find out that I'd shattered my scapula and broken several ribs, which is not really much of a problem. Broken bones kind of heal. However, on the impact, my left lung had almost exploded. It's called a lung hemothorax. Exploded might be a little bit dramatic, but basically it sort of does pop, and you can no longer breathe. And that's obviously quite problematic. So what ensued was pretty much about a 3-hour fight for my life whilst I was moved to the hospital in Kalba, and where I first received some painkillers. But it's like just being incredibly winded and you can't get oxygen in. And
so throughout this, I mean, how long did you have to wait for support?
It took about an hour for the first ambulance to come, and then they put me in one ambulance, and the drive to the hospital was about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I think I went in 2 different ambulances to get there. So it was quite interesting, mate, and it really taught me a lot of things. I spent a lot of time in the last couple of years talking about it. So thank you again. And I always try and thank people that ask me, because it's almost in a weird way, it's almost like therapy for me to be able to get it out and to speak about it. It's helped me to recover. I've never had a single nightmare from it, but the more I talk about it, the more I get to process it, and it becomes less surreal and more real. And it was incredible. I learned so much from it. I learned that, you can do incredible things if you focus, but the thing that I had to put most focus into was breathing, which is weird because it's something that since we've been chatting, mate, we've done subconsciously. We do subconsciously constantly, and literally for 3 hours, every breath, I'm just going,
wow. It's really focusing on just the breathing out of one lung and trying to keep it going until you get some professional help, right? Full on.
Exactly.
Really full on.
So it was crazy, mate. And 3 days in intensive care, and then another 5 days in hospital, and everything that comes with it, and then all of the recovery. So to finish, that was in February. So to finish the year on 24th of November, to finish those 30 marathons was. And I guess the more I think about it, the more, it was crazy. God knows how I did it.
Yeah, right. I mean, was there any real low point during your recovery? where you kind of question things, or you kind of reach this low point?
Yeah, there was, mate. I and a lot of people say to me, they say, "Oh, you recovered so fast," and I sort of look at them and go, "Were you with me the whole time?" Because it was brutal. I remember I'd been home for about 4 or 5 days, and when you break that many ribs, and a few of my ribs I broke in 2 places, it's very difficult to get comfortable in any position.
Yeah.
And I remember one night I literally turned to Holly and I was just like, I've just had enough of this shit, you know? And I was thinking, I thought there was an out. I thought I could just make it stop.
Yeah.
And it was really the more I reflect on it, the more I was just like, it was probably just a moment of almost, yes, I was in a lot of pain, but it was almost, I'd lost track of what I was trying to achieve, which was to live, you know, and where I'd been a week or so before. It was, that was really tough, mate.
It sounds like a hell of a process, right? And I mean, referring back to your process of how to kind of develop that ultra mindset, it sounds like you were going through that with your own accent.
I was, mate. I totally
admitting there's a problem. This isn't going to be a quick recovery. Rejecting the fact that the problem is going to stop you from living. Relaxing afterwards and continuing. Yeah.
It was nuts, mate. And like some days, I think, I listened to your show, mate. It's almost like you attract people that have had traumatic accidents, but
we only let people on if they've had traumatic accidents, I'm afraid. So
it's like those that have the cats that have had 9 lives or whatever you say. But you go through days where nothing's comfortable. And yesterday I can move my arm to eye level, and today I can only get it to chest level. And there's no reason for it. And, it is literally steps forward, steps back. And you have to, I remember so clearly, mate, when I was in hospital and I told my wife I was in intensive care, and I told Holly, I said, I'm going to start training now. And she looked at me like I was just high on all the drugs. And literally, mate, what I would do was turn my hand from palm down to palm up really quite slowly. But that was training. So all through my recovery, yes, I did have a couple of very low points, but I would always go back to what can I do now? And if I could do something to make myself better, that's worth celebrating. Yeah. And I think no matter what people are facing, whether it's in your business life, whether it's in your sports life, the goals that you're pursuing there, or whether it's in your relationships, look for these small wins, because they are everywhere, and if your arm's not working, but your legs are working, then that's fantastic, because you can do something, and it's, we all, no matter who we are, we all to a certain extent seek perfection, because no one, like if you ask everyone, oh, do you want to be average, mate? Like no one's going to stick their hand up. So we are seeking perfection. So we have this vision of what we want to be and how we want to achieve it. And of course we're impatient, so we want it now. But what I say is, like, some days I'd go to the gym, I'd have my program written out, how I'm going to rebuild my shoulder, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do that workout. But then I'd try something else and I could do that. And then you gain such an appreciation for other things. So, and these are the things that I talk about a lot, about gaining this appreciation, making every day one of the best days, really staying focused and staying present, not wishing for tomorrow. I didn't wish it was over. Yeah, in that moment I explained in the bed, I was like, I just can't go on like this, And if you said you've got 3 wishes, I'd like, I wish I didn't bloody feel like this anymore. But, I think we have to embrace what's happening as opposed to try and fight against it. And that's when we learn more and we grow more as human beings, really.
Yeah, 100%. I've got a question that comes to mind. whenever I speak to someone who's gone through something very, very difficult, this kind of question pops up in my own mind because it's something I've asked myself in the past as well. Looking at your experience in your accident, would you say that you've drawn more positives than negatives, or more negatives from positives from that experience?
Mate, I don't see any negatives.
I thought that would be the answer.
I don't, and it's not. I'm not just trying to be a Mr. Motivation, mate. I have shit days. Like, I have tough times. Mate. I have tough times in my business. I have tough times in my relationships. I wake up some mornings and I don't feel $100, but I don't sit around worrying about it or dwelling on it. A lot of people will say, you know, what's one of the what would you tell your 18-year-old self? Nothing. Go and enjoy it. You know, I don't have regrets, mate. So I don't look at my accident. I think I look at some of the negatives of it and just laugh because it's funny. You know, it's kind of, mate, and we joke because this is how funny I think it is, because normally we've done this route before. The route that we're on, we've done before. I've ridden with these guys before. We're mates. And every time we've done this route, we pull into a petrol station. It's the petrol station near Hatta, and we'd order a cup of coffee. We'd sit and we'd have a cup of coffee. This day, I said, guys, it's my round. I'll get the coffees. No one wants a coffee. So I tell the guys now, I'm like, listen, anywhere we go, if I offer you guys a coffee, we're having a coffee. Because we'd have stayed 5 minutes and the truck would have gone and everything.
Yeah, right.
So I look at it and I'm just like, you know what? You have to laugh, mate. And I've laughed at that since ICU, since we realized that if we'd have had a bloody coffee, we'd have been okay. You know, so it's
completely. You know, the Royal Marines in the UK have a saying. It's almost like a maxim, which is cheerfulness in the face of adversity. Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of banter in that involved, and but you'll never find them, you know, feeling really down when things are going on that's tough around them, right? Because it's almost like a coping mechanism. Having a sense of humor, having an amazing sense of humor around a difficult subject can be an amazing way of boosting morale as a group, but also as an individual. So exactly as you said.
You see it a lot in, especially the guys that I hang out with. Like, it's funny because you know it's getting tough for us when we start laughing. Yeah, like it's a dead set giveaway, man. Yeah. If you're seeing us making jokes, laughing, like a lot of people, they say, you guys make it look so easy. We're like, that's when we're actually suffering the most.
I bet day 30 of the 30-day marathon was a laugh for you then. I bet you were uncontrollably laughing on that.
we're actually having the best time of my life. It was awesome. Yeah. The pain was excruciating, but but it's because that's how we express it. It's the same thing, mate. You know, you've got one option. You can laugh or cry, you know, and sometimes, listen, we're human. To cry is natural, and that's great, and it's a way that a lot of people let things out. But I find that just laughing and releasing dopamine just makes everything better. So, mate, there are a lot of things I could sit around. I could say, this wasn't great, that wasn't great, but I don't have time to do that, mate. I want to look back on it, and I want to be able to stand up in front of 200, 500, 20 people and tell my story and help them. You know, and that's really what I've dedicated a lot of time to over the last few years. I've spoken to hundreds of companies and used my story and the principle I've learned to motivate their staff. I did one this morning. I've got one tomorrow at lunchtime, and that to me is super powerful. And it's a continuation of what has been a thread of this chat, of just serving other people, just helping other people, because so many people helped me, mate. So it was a wild time. I don't want to crash again. I'm not keen for that again. I don't think Holly is either. I think, it was tough for both of us and for my mum and dad, for my family. And I don't want to put them through that, mate, but it really was, it's part of my life now. And it's part of me, and I'm cool with it.
Amazing. Well, mate, inspirational, really incredible chat. I feel like we could go on for another couple of hours, but conscious not to.
This is ultra. What are you talking about?
Oh, you're right. Oh, sorry. This is the wrong podcast. Sorry.
You let me down.
This is the ultra podcast. We've still got a few people watching. We're not gonna stop this until the last live person goes.
Such a good
listen, mate. Guys, if you don't know, Marcus was actually podcasting before podcasting was cool. So before we all started jumping on the bandwagon, Marcus was podcasting about 7 years ago, and he's got about 700 shows on the podcast. Right? What's the name of the podcast again?
It's just called the Inner Fight Podcast.
Inner Fight Podcast.
FIGHT. Yeah.
So if you want to hear more, guys, from Marcus, I would definitely suggest checking out the Inner Fight Podcast and hearing more of a story. I think if you've enjoyed today, you'd really, really enjoy that. Marcus, what's the best way for everyone to get in contact with you if they want to send you a message or just connect online?
The easiest way, mate, is Instagram, MJD_Smith. I will reply to everyone. That's my promise in life. It gets hard some days, but I do it. MJD_Smith. I'd love to hear from people. If I can help you, just reach out to me.
Amazing. Marcus, thank you so much for going on, mate. Really enjoyed that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for doing what you're doing, mate. It's awesome.
Cheers, buddy.